Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Make sure to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in the description. Today, we are setting our sights on a topic that is both incredibly celebratory and, frankly, a little bit daunting.
Yeah, daunting is probably the perfect word for it.
Right. We are looking at the absolute juggernaut that is Springbok rugby, and more specifically, the monumental task of eventually replacing the mastermind himself, Rassie Erasmus.
I mean, it's the single most compelling succession question in global sports right now. When you step back and look at the sheer scale of the operation Rassie has built, the conversation about what comes next isn't just about picking a new tactician, It's about inheriting a fiercely protected national identity.
Exactly. And we finally have a concrete timeline for this transition. Rassie has officially extended his contract through to 2031, which means he is going to oversee the next 2 Rugby World Cups.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. So this deep dive is really for you, the diehard fan, to start forming your own opinions on who should carry the torch next. Because the future of South African rugby is a conversation you absolutely need to be part of, and, well, the maneuvers for who takes over are already happening in the background. We are unpacking a great piece from the South African by Dean Boyle today that outlines the 3 leading candidates.
And before we get into those names, the sheer gravity of that 2031 timeline cannot be overstated. By the time he steps down, Rassie will have essentially dictated the direction of South African rugby for over a decade. He isn't just a coach, he is a cultural architect.
Oh, 100%. He built the whole foundation.
Right. To understand the weight of replacing him, you just have to look at the mechanics of his success. We are talking about 3 rugby championship titles, 2018-19, 2024, and 2025. 2 consecutive Rugby World Cups, a 2021 British and Irish Lions series victory. But beyond the silverware, he built a proprietary system.
Yeah, it's not just that they win, it's how they win. I mean, Rassie introduced the bomb squad, the 7-1 bench splits, the traffic light system from the coach's box.
Traffic lights, yeah.
He turned the Springboks into this relentless, hyper-physical, highly intellectual rugby machine. So when you are tasked with replacing him, you aren't just taking over a team. It's like Rassie built this incredibly complex, custom high-performance engine. If you bring in the wrong mechanic to service it, the whole thing seizes up.
That is the perfect way to look at it. The Springbok environment is highly specialized. The defensive systems, the emphasis on set-piece dominance, the specific psychological triggers they use to motivate the squad, it's a very bespoke ecosystem.
Right.
And that leads us directly into the first major philosophy of succession. Do you hire from within to protect the ecosystem? If you want someone who already knows exactly how to tune that custom engine, you look right next to Rassie on the bench. You look at Mzwandile's stick.
Stick is a fascinating option. He has been deeply embedded in this setup as an assistant coach through both World Cup cycles. And SA Rugby has always leaned heavily toward local, homegrown coaching talent.
Yeah, they definitely prefer that continuity.
Exactly. And Stick checks every single box for internal continuity. He knows the player core intimately. He understands the daily rhythm of a Springbok camp.
Let's break down his actual role, because that's where his true value lies. As an assistant, Stick has been instrumental in the off-the-ball work rate and the core skills of the backline. He understands the granular mechanics of the Bok way,
Which is invaluable.
In high-performance sports, the institutional knowledge he possesses is pure gold. He knows exactly how to periodize training for a World Cup final. He knows which players need an arm around their shoulder and which ones need a harsh truth. He represents ultimate stability.
I see the value in that. I really do. It's kind of like corporate succession, like Apple handing the reins from Steve Jobs to Tim Cook. But here is where I have to challenge the idea of just promoting the ultimate insider. Going back to our engine analogy, Stick might know exactly how to tune the carburetor that Rassie built, but what happens when the sport evolves and the engine itself is suddenly outdated?
That's the big question.
Right, because Rassie's genius is his constant disruptive innovation. If you just promote the assistant, who is brilliant at executing someone else's master plan, do you risk stagnation? Can you maintain the magic without the original magician?
That is the ultimate danger of internal succession. The risk of continuity is that it slowly decays into complacency if the new leader doesn't have their own distinct vision. When an assistant steps into the head coach role, the psychological dynamic shifts completely.
Yeah, you're not just the friendly assistant anymore.
Exactly. Now, Stick would command the absolute respect of the locker room on day one, which is a massive hurdle most new coaches stumble over. But you are entirely right about the burden of innovation. If the Springboks' physical dominance is eventually neutralized by a team like Ireland or New Zealand, Stick won't be able to turn to Rassie for a radical new game plan. He will have to invent it himself.
And as an assistant, your job is to offer solutions to the head coach. But as the head coach, you are the one who has to pull the trigger on which solution to use, knowing your job is on the line if it fails. Stick has never had to be the final decision maker in a crisis of that magnitude.
Right. The mental transition from advisor to ultimate shot caller is the steepest learning curve in professional coaching. Some brilliant tacticians simply freeze when the ultimate accountability rests entirely on their shoulders.
Which brings us to an incredibly interesting pivot. If the main concern with promoting an assistant is a lack of ultimate top-tier leadership experience, the source points us to candidate number 2, who bridges that exact gap. But real quick, if you're loving this breakdown, don't forget to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in the description to stay ahead of the game.
Always good to stay updated. So, addressing that exact gap in experience brings us to Deon Davids. Like Stick, Davids is a key pillar of the current Springboks coaching group. He is heavily involved in the forwards and the set-piece mechanics.
Right.
But Davids possesses one massive differentiator. He has actual top-tier head coaching exposure at the professional level.
Right. He was the head coach of the Southern Kings. But hold on, let me push back hard here. The Southern Kings famously struggled. They were constantly battling financial issues, player exoduses, and, well, they lost a lot of rugby games.
They definitely had a rough go of it.
So how does navigating a struggling, under-resourced regional franchise prepare you for the ruthless, win-at-all-costs expectation of a World Cup-winning Springbok side? Losing in Port Elizabeth feels like a very different universe than coaching the Boks at Twickenham.
It seems counterintuitive, I'll give you that. But
Okay.
coaching a struggling franchise is arguably the most brutal, effective crucible for a head coach. Think about the emotional calluses Davids had to build.
Okay, fair point.
When you are the head coach of a team that is bleeding money and talent, there is no safety net. You have to face a hostile press conference every single weekend. You have to figure out how to motivate players who know they are outmatched on paper. You have to stretch a tiny budget and innovate tactically just to survive.
So it's crisis management.
Yeah.
You're saying that because he has already managed complete organizational chaos as the guy in charge, managing the pressure of the Springbok job won't shatter him.
Precisely. He has already carried the ultimate mental burden. When you transition from a financially strapped franchise to the best resourced national team in the world, the tactical execution actually becomes easier. But the emotional resilience you built remains.
That's a fascinating way to look at it.
Yeah, and Davids understands the internal ecosystem just like Stick, but he has already flexed that top-tier leadership muscle. Plus, you have to look at what Davids actually coaches for the Springboks. He runs the line-out and the forward pack structure.
Which is basically the absolute lifeblood of South African rugby.
Exactly. Without a dominant set piece, the Springbok game model collapses. Davids is the architect of the launch pad. He understands how to engineer physical dominance, so you have a coach who understands the core tactical identity of the team, has built-in continuity with the players, but also knows what it feels like to have the buck stop with him.
That makes a lot of sense. He gives you the SASE of internal continuity, but with the proven resilience of a guy who has survived the crosshairs. But let's completely flip the script here. Both Stick and Davids represent the internal path. They are guys who are deeply entrenched in the current Bok way.
Right, the insider trap.
But 2031 is a long way away. What if, by the time Rassie leaves, the rest of the world has completely decoded the Springbok system? What if South African rugby decides it doesn't need a tune-up, it needs a completely fresh outside perspective to evolve?
This is the natural life cycle of every sporting dynasty. Look at the All Blacks in the late 2010s or the Australian cricket team in the early 2000s. Eventually, your dominant system runs its natural course, or the sport's rules change in a way that blunts your primary weapon.
Yeah, you can't just do the exact same thing forever.
Exactly. If SA Rugby recognizes that they need evolution over mere continuity, they have to look outside the room.
And that points us directly to candidate number 3, Franco Smith. Now, Smith is entirely outside the Springbok structure. He is currently the head coach of the Glasgow Warriors. And his reputation as one of the sharpest minds in the game is well-earned.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he took a Scottish outfit and transformed them into the United Rugby Championship winners in 2024. It's almost like bringing in a brilliant guest director to direct the sequel of a blockbuster movie. He brings his own distinct flavor, but still respects the genre.
That's a great analogy. It is a staggering achievement, what he did with Glasgow. And we have to look at how he did it. Taking a Northern Hemisphere club and winning a highly competitive cross-hemisphere tournament requires a very specific tactical agility.
Right, you can't be a one-trick pony.
Exactly. Smith didn't just inherit a great team, he completely re-engineered Glasgow. He took the traditional Scottish expansive game and injected it with a ruthless, South African-style defensive edge and forward grit.
Okay, so going back to our engine analogy from earlier, if Stick is tuning the current engine, and Davids is the resilient mechanic who can fix it under pressure, bringing in Franco Smith is like taking the massive physical Springbok chassis, ripping out the old diesel engine, and dropping in a hyper-efficient modern hybrid motor.
Yep, exactly that.
He respects the physical nature of South African rugby. I mean, he is South African after all, but he brings a completely fresh attacking structure.
That is exactly what he offers, modernization. The biggest danger of a long dynasty is groupthink. When you've been sitting in the same coach's box winning World Cups, it becomes almost impossible to objectively identify the flaws in your own system.
Because you just think, why change what works, right?
That's precisely. But an outsider like Franco Smith comes in with fresh eyes. He isn't emotionally attached to the 7-1 split if the data says it's no longer optimal. He can look at the Bokke setup and say, the defensive line speed is world-class, keep it. But our attacking phase play in the opposition 22, that needs to be completely rewritten.
But imagine the astronomical pressure he would be under. South African rugby fans treat Rassie's methods like sacred texts. If an internal guy like Stick or Davids tweaks the system and loses a test match, the public might be patient because they are, part of the family.
They get the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. But if an outsider like Smith comes in, dismantles Rassie's iconic bomb squad strategy, and then loses a game to Wales, the country would absolutely riot. The backlash would be instantaneous.
You've hit on the inherent, terrifying risk of evolution. An outsider has zero grace period. They have to win immediately while simultaneously tearing down the old foundations. But Smith has proven he can operate outside the familiar South African safety net.
Right, he's coached all over.
Yeah, he has coached in Italy, he has coached in Scotland. He knows how to adapt his communication and his tactics to different environments and different styles of play. That adaptability is exactly what you need if you are going to navigate the inevitable backlash of changing a beloved system.
It really highlights just how deep the South African coaching talent pool is right now.
Oh.
We are debating between an elite tactician with institutional memory, a battle-hardened head coach who commands the forwards, and a brilliant expatriate who just conquered the URC.
It's a very good problem to have.
It really is. And the wildest part of all this, Rassie Erasmus is a borderline obsessive planner. While he is actively plotting how to dominate the present, you know for a fact he is already quietly shaping this 2031 transition behind closed doors.
Oh, without a doubt. It is the ultimate inheritance. Whoever takes this job is stepping into the most scrutinized, high-pressure coaching role in the world. But the foundation Rassie is leaving behind, the depth of the player pathways, the alignment between the franchises and the national team is incredibly robust. The table is set. It just requires the ultimate steward to decide what meal is served next.
Which brings us directly back to you, the listener. We've laid out the mechanics of the transition. Rassie's shoes are undeniably legendary, but there are strong, credible options. The source asks, and so do we. Who do you think should be the next Springboks head coach when Rassie Erasmus leaves?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
We really do. Are you looking for the institutional knowledge of Mzwandile Stick, the crisis-tested leadership of Deon Davids, or the fresh mindset of Franco Smith? We want to hear your tactical breakdown and your thoughts, so let us know in the comments.
And as you map out your own vision for the future of the Springboks, I'll leave you with this final thought to mull over. When that new coach eventually walks into the dressing room in 2031, what will actually be their most difficult psychological hurdle?
Oh, that's a great question.
Will their biggest challenge be trying to perfectly replicate Rassie's methods to satisfy the massive expectations of a demanding nation? Or will it be finding the courage to completely rewrite the playbook, risking their entire career to finally step out of his massive looming shadow?
Wow, that is a heavy thought to leave on. The burden of legacy versus the courage to evolve. Before we go, one last reminder to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in the description. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.